Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Elisa Ewan, and I'm the Assistant Director of Alumni Relations at Teachers College. And I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today for our Alumni Career Development webinar series featuring alumna Ruth Gotian. The webinar series covers a range of career topics and includes speakers from a variety of backgrounds. The series is co-sponsored by the TC Office of Career Education and Professional Development and the Office of Alumni Relations. Videos of past webinars are available on our website at www.tc.edu/alumni/career webinars. Today, we celebrate National Mentoring Month as Ruth presents Leveraging Mentoring, Creating Your Path to Success. Ruth is the inaugural Assistant Dean of Mentoring and Executive Director of the Mentoring Academy at Weill Cornell Medicine. In addition, she is the Chief Learning Officer in Anesthesiology and the Assistant Professor of Education in Anesthesiology. Ruth started her career in finance and banking and transitioned to higher and medical education, a field she's been immersed in for 28 out of the last 30 years. She received her BS and MS in Business Management from the University at Stony Brook in New York, as well as certificates in Executive Leadership and Managing for Execution from Cornell University. She earned her doctorate at TC, where she studied adult learning and leadership, and focused her research on what makes physician scientists successful. She has won numerous awards in mentoring, and most recently was awarded the Bert I. Shapiro Award for having a national impact on physician scientist training. We will be doing an activity today during our webinar, so please take this time to grab a pen and paper. If you have any issues with the audio or tech, please feel free to chat me directly in the chat box. And without further ado, here's Ruth Gotian.
Hi, everyone. I am so excited to be doing another webinar for TC being one of my favorite places in the world. It's where I received my doctorate, and it was really formative years and really very exciting time. So as you heard, I lead the mentoring efforts at Weill Cornell Medicine, which is the medical school of Cornell University. The medical school itself is located on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. And to our knowledge, we are the first academic medical center to launch a mentoring academy. So my job is to oversee and leverage and amplify the mentoring efforts of our 1,800 faculty members as they rise to success. So I would like to go through the slides with you and really try to teach you a little bit about mentoring and how you can leverage it and how you can be a better mentor and be a mentee, because really people will be doing both. So the first part that's critical to understand is that mentoring is really part of a relationship. You don't just go up to someone and say, will you be my mentor? It's really a relationship that is developed over time, and it starts with these little snippets of conversations that occur. So TC often quotes the Center for Creative Leadership, where we hear 70 to 90% of what we learn is done informally, which is why those coffee breaks at conferences are so important, because that's where we learn more often than what we learn during the conference session. That's where we meet people. That's where relationships are formed. Just yesterday, I was talking to a mid-level faculty member who I work with, who's also getting her doctorate at TC. We were talking in the hallway where I work, and all of a sudden 3 other deans walked by. I introduced her to those people because I have the relationship with that faculty member. I introduced her to those people. Within 5 minutes after they said, what do you do? What do you do? She was invited to a networking event that same evening. So again, that was quick, that was amplified, but it's all because of relationships that happen. Just so happened in this case, I had the relationship with the 2 different people, the person who was seeking the mentorship and the person who was offering the mentorship, and I was the conduit between the 2. So there's actually quite a bit of research about why you should have a mentor. They have the experience that you may not have. They have the perspective, because very often when we're working on something, we have our blinders on. So it's really important to have the perspective. It is the same reason that we say that why we need diversity, because it brings other perspectives to the table. It's the same thing here. It brings other perspectives. They may have skills that you don't have. So we'll talk about who can offer what types of skills. And they also have something called political capital. Political capital is who they know, right? So the example I just gave, I introduced this junior faculty member to these 3 other deans that she didn't know. So that was my political capital, was knowing those deans and introducing her to them. So the political capital is the network of your mentor. So when we talk about mentorship, it's really important to distinguish between these 4 different types: the role model, mentor, coach, and sponsor, because very often you hear them interchange, but there are some very finite differences between them. So I'm hoping that this back of the napkin kind of description can really help you crystallize the differences between them. So a role model is someone you want to become. It could be someone you have never met, you will never meet, but there's something about them that you really want to emulate. So for example, I say that I would like to be able to connect with people the way Oprah Winfrey connects with people. I will likely never meet Oprah Winfrey, but I would like to get that skill from her. That's a role model. I want to have the public speaking skills of President Barack Obama. I'm probably never going to meet President Barack Obama, but I do want to be able to have those public speaking skills that he does, as he's such a strong public speaker. So that's a role model. A mentor is someone who talks with you. You come to them with an idea, a goal, a vision, a plan, and they help you develop that plan, right? If my job is to get promoted, and they help me think through what are the things I need to do in order to get promoted. And they help me formulate the plan to do that. They work with me hand in hand, right? It could be publishing, it could be speaking, whatever it is. A coach is someone who talks at you, and it's usually for a finite period of time. So if I want to give a TED Talk and I really want to improve my public speaking skills, I will hire a coach who specializes in storytelling so that they can help me get my rambling talk down to 18 minutes and in a way that will really connect with people. That is what a coach can help you. Maybe it's a coach that you hire to help you develop an executive presence. So it's usually for a finite period of time, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, whatever works for you, to work on something very specific. A sponsor is someone who talks about you, and very often when you're not in the room. These are the people who are nominating you for committees, nominating you for awards, nominating you for opportunities. It's very important that you have that. We talk about the value of mentors, but you must also have a sponsor so that you can really get promoted and really advance in your career. So I talked about the 4 different types of mentors. I want to just talk about the benefits of finding a mentor. Now, I work in academia. I have to always show the research that's behind all of this, and you'll see very often the articles where I've pulled this from. So there are definitely clear-cut benefits to finding a mentor. First of all, if you have one, you will have a higher salary and higher salary growth. So a mentor can say you are underselling yourself. You need to ask for 20% more. This is especially true with women who always request less than what they are worth. A mentor can also tell you it is time to ask for a raise. It's time to ask for more money. They will tell you you'll have more promotions because the mentor will push you. It is really time to start putting your package together. It's really time to look for other opportunities. It's really time to get promoted. You need to put yourself out there. Because a mentor is really working with you hand in hand, those who have mentors report greater job and career satisfaction because the mentor is able to help the mentee see that a bump in the road is not a lifetime sentence. They will actually get through it, and a mentor often helps them get through it. So it could be a grant you didn't get, a paper that was rejected, a job you didn't get, whatever it is, it's not forever. And again, the mentor can help bring that perspective to get you out of your funk. Higher self-efficacy. So self-confidence means you've done it before, you can do it again, but the self-efficacy means I've never done it before, but I think I have the self-efficacy to think that I can do this, right? So in higher education, unlike in the business world, the presidents of universities don't often have an MBA. They get promoted because of their publications, their fundraising, but they feel that they can do it. They have the self-efficacy that they can lead a team and lead a big budget and fundraise quite a bit. So those with mentors actually have higher reported self-efficacy. Burnout is a major, major issue in all sectors. However, those with a mentor actually report lower burnout and greater commitment to their career. They actually don't jump around different careers so much. For those of us in academia, those who have mentors have more publications. And this is very clear. And I give my own examples because I am both a mentor and a mentee, which is what I advocate for everybody. I have a mentee who is a student who had an idea. She posted it on a Slack channel that we're on. And I said to her, I think this can be converted into a paper. She has never published before. We worked on it back and forth and back and forth. It did actually develop into a paper, and it was published, and it was her first publication. But it's a mentor is there to push them to do that and see how their germ of an idea, their seed, can actually develop and bloom into something bigger. So in those of us in medical education, to have protected research time, protected academic time to think and to be productive, and not have outside responsibilities is so critical. And those who have a mentor actually get more of that protected time because a mentor tells them what they could and should ask for. Now, it doesn't only help the mentee, it doesn't only help you, but it actually also helps the institution because those who are mentored, the mentee actually reports a higher loyalty to the institution. And this is critical because if you were to leave the institution, it's actually very expensive to replace you. So these are some of the things that organizations can do by having these mentoring networks to get people to stay within an organization. Now, I always get asked what makes a good mentor, and we're going to run through this because I want to talk to you about who should be on your mentoring team. The first thing is the person needs to have time and they need to be willing to mentor, but none of us have time. We're all very, very busy. And I think people don't always recognize mentoring when they see it. I think the time of meeting with your mentor every other Tuesday at 4 o'clock with an agenda, while that's very nice, I don't think it's practical anymore with all of these things that we have and the email that we're checking after work. So, 10-minute hallway conversations or text messages, those count. Those count. So I think you should capitalize on those. But it has to be very targeted. You ask with a very specific question. So have the time, find somebody who's willing to mentor you, and they will find the time. My mentors are extremely, extremely busy. But when I ask very specific targeted questions, they always have the time to respond. They have to have certain accomplishments and are willing to share the knowledge of that. So the dissertation research I did at TC was about the most successful physician scientists of our generation. And I got to interview Nobel laureates and institute directors at the National Institutes of Health and a former Surgeon General, and that level of people. One of the people that I interviewed, for example, he had multiple drugs approved by the FDA, by the Food and Drug Administration. And I said, so how do you cascade that information to your mentees? And he's obviously very busy. And he said to me, every time I talk to the FDA or anything involved with getting it approved, I have a conference call. I always invite my mentees. It's in a conference room. It's on speakerphone. They hear the entire conversation. And after that phone call, he talks with his mentees about what they heard, what they thought, what questions they had. And that's how he was transferring that knowledge. That was his way of doing it. You obviously need to trust your mentor. There is a growing amount of literature and unfortunately negative experiences where people have mentors that they can't trust. They take the mentee's data and publish it as their own. They don't respond to their mentee. They're always traveling somewhere. They're basically MIA, they're just gone. And they don't trust them when they're there, that there's some mentors who take credit for the work of the mentee without sharing the credit. So it's important that you trust your mentor. Obviously, they need to be compassionate and they need to be fair. Now, this is not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but there will be times where you will need to talk through some difficult challenges with your mentor. And they need to have enough emotional intelligence to help you with that. Now, there's Dr. Cram, she actually talks about mentoring functions, and she talks about both career functions, which are the sponsorship, the exposure, the coaching, protecting you from bad situations, and also the psychosocial functions, the role modeling, the acceptance, the counseling, sometimes the friendship. So it's really the balance of the two. Finally, a great mentor needs to communicate opportunities and develop your independence. So the mentor needs to give the mentee what are called stretch assignments to help them really grow. But they need to let them know of these things. They need to let them know of opportunities they should apply for, conferences they should go to, etc. But they should not always be attached at the hip. So for those in academic medicine, they say you should be publishing with your mentor for about 5 years, at which point you should be publishing independently with your mentees. Maybe the mentor will move to middle author, but you are not always joined to your mentee. So for those of you at TC, you're not going to publish with your dissertation advisor forever, right? So it's important to know when to make that cut, even though I love my dissertation advisor. All right, so the old school way of thinking about mentors was there was one senior mentor to a junior mentee, and that senior mentor was the old wise one. That is not the more contemporary way of thinking. The more contemporary way of thinking is that you should have an entire network of mentors, because everything we said, the benefits of a mentor that we said several slides ago, that is just compounded when you have a network. They have multiple perspectives. They have varied experiences. And like on LinkedIn, you see your first, your network, and your second and your third, your connections to it. They can really help you expand that, which would then help you get additional perspectives, additional opportunities, etc. So I am a huge advocate of mentoring teams, and you'll see those people who talk about mentoring feel the same way. And just to go over who should be on your mentoring team, they should definitely be in your field, right? So if you're in finance or education or academic medicine or law, whatever it is, they should be in your field. You should also get people from outside your field and industry. So while I am an educator who works in academic medicine, I also have mentors from legal, the legal profession, the military, education, medicine. So you really need to really expand your network, because there are other perspectives. When I have a challenge that I deal with, it's very interesting to hear how other industries deal with it. So for example, when I travel somewhere, I always try to meet with people I know within the network while I'm there. So if I'm going, say, to another state to give a talk, I'll figure out who do I know in that area and try to reach out to them to see if I can give a talk. Well, more often than not, they tell me that they're busy, they can't do it, et cetera, et cetera. I talked to someone who's in the legal profession, and he informed me that the way they do it in the legal profession, a lot of their meetings are last minute. So they say, I am going to be in your town on Friday, and I am only going to be there for 48 hours. Any chance that you can meet for 30 minutes for coffee? I tried that approach, and don't you know, all of a sudden people were available. If I hadn't spoken to somebody from the legal profession about this challenge, I would not have thought about that way of solving that issue. Community of practice is something that's talked about quite a bit at TC. Community of practice are your people who work in your field, who do what you do, and you can meet with them virtually or in person. It could be a listserv, it could be a conference, you could have dinner with a small group of them. And it's a great way to bounce ideas off of people and hear their perspectives. They are in your world, right? So if you are a graduate student in education, you might have a community of practice of other graduate students in education. If you are a organizational psychologist, you might have a community of practice with other organizational psychologists, and it might be within your firm, it might be within your city, it might be within your state, it might be nationally, and it might be all of them. If you're working on a project, it's very important to also get people with project experience to join your mentoring team. And I also advocate that you have at least 3 levels of people. Obviously, someone senior to you, we've spoken about that. We've spoken about peers. They can provide the empathy you need because they know about what's happening. They might hear about conferences that you may not hear about, call for papers, etc. And I also talk about someone junior to you. And this really came to me because of the dissertation research that I did at TC. The most successful physician scientists of our generation actually get guidance from people who are junior to them. They're not afraid to learn from anyone, and they understand that anyone could provide mentorship to them. So this is important because a lot of the people who are the more junior, for example, the most obvious is they're much more comfortable with the new technology than some of the more senior people. So something that might take us an hour or 2 hours or all day to figure out, they can figure out right away because they were born with that, where we actually had to learn it. They also, the more junior people actually read all the academic articles, while the more senior people usually read the titles and maybe the abstracts. So they are able to provide an additional perspective. And I always ask if there's anyone else that maybe I had left out that you think might be an appropriate person to include. So I write quite a bit for Nature, which is a journal, and I did actually write something about a community of practice, which they called a support team, which are the peers who you can actually get guidance from. So if you're looking for additional information on that, you could just look at nature.com and just put in my last name, it'll come up. So then I get asked, how do you find a mentor? So there's formal mentoring relationships where people are assigned a mentee. I'm not a fan of that because those are usually random. It's usually based on something like your hometown or what you're studying, and those usually don't work out. And actually, there's quite a bit of research that shows they do more harm than good. I advocate for the more informal and organically developed relationships. So what you have to do is network quite a bit. And we can talk about networking. And remember, it's not always going to networking events with a business card. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And it's difficult, even for someone who's an extrovert like me, who's never met a stranger, it can become overwhelming. A great way to do it is start small. Join a committee. It could be at your school, it could be at your organization, it could be at your firm, it could be your society. If you join a committee, you're usually working with a smaller group of people, and you'll get to meet those people. I always recommend, if you have the opportunity to give a talk, you should do that, because then people come up to you. I am still a fan of the printed business cards because what you can do, and what I always recommend to people, is on the back of a business card, you write the date you met them, where you met them, and one thing that you spoke about. And then you communicate with them with those business cards. I also recommend that on the back of your phone, you have one of those phone pockets and you have business cards there, because you may not always walk around with your wallet, but you always walk around with your phone. And if you have some business cards in there, then even in the elevator, you can actually meet someone. I've met them waiting for a train. I've met people in elevators. I've met people at Starbucks. So absolutely, you can give the card out. The important thing that 95% of people don't do is they don't follow up. So it's important to follow up with an email as well. If you have the opportunity to go to conferences, I recommend that you do that. And as I said at the beginning, the coffee breaks are probably the most important part. You don't need to go to all the networking receptions, especially if that's overwhelming, but you might meet 2 or 3 people and then go with them to dinner. And that might be more your speed than a big networking event. Definitely have your 30 and 60-second elevator speech, which is very short description of who you are and what you do. So when you meet someone, you're able to do that. So for example, I tell people, hi, my name is Ruth Gotian. I'm the Assistant Dean for Mentoring at Weill Cornell Medicine. I oversee the mentoring and success of 1,800 faculty members. There's just enough information there to hopefully pique their curiosity. Something for those of you who are studying English as a second language, you will learn about starter conversation sentences. These are things that you have your questions that you are comfortable with asking. It could be something as I work with physicians who have to wear scrubs, and the way they always, the one thing they can differentiate themselves are either with the frames on their glasses or with their socks. So I very often make comments about their socks. That is one of my starter sentences. You can say something about, where are you from? Did you have a long commute to get here? Which was your favorite session so far? Whatever you feel safe with and comfortable with, that will help you to start a conversation. I am a big fan of social media. If you're not on Twitter, I highly recommend it, because you can really get a pulse of what the emerging topics are, and you can communicate with people as well and really build a network. I have done it that way. I have gotten invited to talks based on social media, and it really helps amplify your work. I recommend also not just giving talks, but hosting speakers as well. When you host a speaker, you actually need to communicate with them electronically, and that gives you one-on-one access to people. When you are organizing meetings, it's the same thing. You have access to all of the speakers. I also recommend coming to a meeting early if you can, because after the speaker usually sets up his or her slides, they're usually just sitting there. And that's a great time to have a one-on-one conversation. And then, of course, you always access your community of practice. So I told you I work in academia. One of the things that we do is we always put up our own papers. So here's another one on networking for introverted scientists that was in Nature. If you want to hear more about that, specifically for the quiet leaders, this was also a topic of a webinar I gave last year for TC, for the TC alumni. So it is archived there if you want to see that as well. This paper is a result of the webinar I gave to TC last year. So thanks, TC. Okay, so I did enough talking. I think right now is a great time for you to take your paper and pen out. And what I want you to consider is something that we call a passion audit. None of us love everything that we do at work, and some of the things are really depleting and exhausting. But there's a lot of research that shows if we only spend 20% of our time doing the things we're passionate about, then the other things don't matter so much to us. They don't hurt as much, they're not as depleting as much, and we're not as burnt out. So I thought we would do a little bit of a passion audit. We're just going to get started, and you can continue it at your leisure. So this is going to be 3 columns. On the first left column, are all the things, list all the things that you love to do. Whether or not you do them in your job is irrelevant. Just list all the things you love to do, and please try to be as specific as you can. So I wrote, I love to talk to people. I love career development. I love writing. So I want you to just take a moment and write all the things that you love to do. You would do it for free if you could. Something that psychologists call flow. You don't even realize that time passes by when you're doing it. The middle column should be things that you would just give away. If you never did them again, that would be okay. Even if you're really, really, really good at it, what would you give away? Maybe it's budgets. Maybe it's grant writing. Maybe it's supervising people. It depletes you. Doesn't matter if you're good at it. Maybe it's crisis management. Maybe it's operations. Now the third column, write things you're really not good at. You really have no energy and no desire to even learn it. And maybe that's web development, and maybe that's database management. Just write what that is. So what you're going to start doing after this webinar, and this doesn't have to be finished today, but you're going to walk around with that 3-column list and try to figure out what kind of job would it be where you can take most of the things from the first column. What would it look like? And maybe it doesn't exist anymore. Maybe it doesn't exist at all. Maybe no one has conceived it yet. But what would it look like? And start thinking about that. And it might take some things from your middle column that you will have to include in there. But if the job has at least 20% of things that you can do from your first column, you're actually going to be really happy. So start thinking about what that would look like. And it's important to know what you want for the future so that your mentor can help you. I always get asked for tips for mentees and tips for mentors in order to leverage their time together and make it really effective. So I wanted to give you a few tips. The first one is pick your mentors wisely. Not everyone who has expertise in something needs to be your mentor. So really consider them very carefully. And I always share the story of the person who on paper likely would have been the best dissertation advisor for me, it turned out was not the appropriate person. And I really spoke to a lot of people to find out the best person. So really be very thoughtful about it and select wisely. I think I picked the best dissertation advisor for me, but that took a lot of searching. I recommend, again, choosing a team, figure out their style. Do they just give you readings to do, or are you like me and you prefer to talk through challenges and talk through problems, right? I needed to find a dissertation advisor who could actually talk through some of the challenges with me. When I have a problem at work, I try not to send 55 emails about it. I definitely don't send an article about it. I actually get up and talk to people. Another thing for a mentee to consider is that the mentor is there to help you with your plan. But you have to, as our dean says, meet them at the 50-yard line. So you need to have a vision, you need to have a goal, and you need to have a plan of how to get there. So maybe your vision one day is to be president of a university. But the goal is first to get promoted to associate professor. Well, what is the plan to get to that goal? So as I said earlier, you need publications and you need national talks and you need to serve on national committees, whatever it is. If you come with that list to your mentor, the mentor can help you find collaborators, can help you find ideas to flush out for publication, could introduce you to people, could maybe get you on some national committees. But if you just say, I want to be associate professor, that's not enough. You literally have to have a bulleted list of some of the things you thought about that need to happen in order for you to reach that goal. And the mentor will be there to help you flush out that goal. It'll be so much more productive if you come with that bulleted list. Again, the mentor is there to refine that plan. It's not to come up with one. If you're expecting your mentor to come up with a plan for you, you did not come prepared. So a mentor is not there to solve your problems, but they are there to help you solve your problems by maybe suggesting people that you should talk to or things that you should consider. The best thing for a mentee to do is under-promise and over-deliver. And I always credit my friends, Dr. Vineet Chopra and Sanjay Saint at the University of Michigan for saying this when they talk about mentoring. If as a mentee you under-promise and over-deliver, you will be the shining star for your mentor. And when there's an opportunity, they will always come to you because you're going to be the person that they can count on to shine. So one thing's about feedback, and we always talk about this quite a bit at TC, but I think the rest of the world doesn't do it as well. Feedback is meant to enhance, not critique your work. And the mentor is really trying to make you a better version of yourself and really enhance your work. So we need to start thinking like musicians and athletes. They have coaches. They're constantly looking at videos as to how to make themselves better at what they do. We need to look at the feedback the same way. If you miss a deadline, your mentor is not going to be pleased with you. So always meet the deadlines. Try not to do it at the last minute if it can be avoided, because that's extremely stressful to a mentor. And be very specific about what you want and what you need. If you need extra time, you need to let them know well in advance, not at the last minute. Now for the mentors, I have the ice cream approach. But before we get to that, again, not everyone who says that they want your guidance do you need to have as one of your mentees. You can actually turf them to people who might be better and better mentors for them. While I told the mentees to have a specific vision, goal, and plan, as a mentor, you should insist on it and explain to them that they really should not come to a meeting until they have this out, so that you can really leverage that time that you're spending together to enhance what they're doing and not just brainstorm. And you're there to really help refine the plan. So the ice cream approach is introduce them to other people, be a connector, engage them. If you're going with them to conferences, say, who here do you want to meet that you haven't met yet, and help introduce them to that. Create opportunities for them. Maybe there is a career development opportunity for them that you can put them up for. Reply to them when they email you, text you, however you decide to have a discourse with them. Encourage them. That goes back to the psychosocial parts of mentoring that Cram talks about. Amplify their achievements. I cannot stress this enough. And this is, again, where social media is so helpful. I think especially Twitter. Whenever one of my mentees has a paper, I amplify it because people need to know about it, and it really helps them as well and motivate them. It's so critical to motivate them. And then just be there, right? Half the time is just being there. And that, if you can't do it in person, do it virtually. Most of my mentors don't even live in the same state as me, but I can call them and they are there. I can text them and they are there. So consider that. Now, how do you ask someone to be your mentor without it sounding like a job? And how do you offer to be somebody's mentor without sounding creepy about it? So this is so important. So you can, if you want to ask someone to be your mentor, don't ask them, will you be my mentor? That sounds like a job. I'm busy, you're busy, we're all busy. I don't have an extra time to take anyone on. But if someone said, I really enjoyed your talk, could I ask you about, or I know you're an expert in such and such, I have a quick question for you about something I'm working on. Would you have 20 minutes that I could just ask you this? I promise you their schedule will open up because you're asking for something very, very specific. As a mentor, you can go up to someone and say, I heard about your work. I think it's great. I know someone else who would be very interested, and I make that connection. Or say, I am very interested in your work. Again, are you familiar with so-and-so? I tell people, don't use the M word. It's just too loaded. It sounds like a job. Don't use the M word. Don't ask someone to be your mentor, and don't say, I want to be your mentor. Because remember, you are not a mentor until your mentee calls you one. I literally do this for a living, and 4 people had to tell me that I'm their mentor. I just thought I was helping them out. They didn't see it that way. So mentors, you are not a mentor until the mentee calls you one. Okay, I want you to flip over that the passion audit that we did to the other side of the paper. And I want you to, I want us to start developing your own mentoring team. So whenever I give talks, I like to leave people with tools that they can build upon after their talks. So at the top or the bottom, whichever you want, write what your goal is. Whatever your big overarching goal is, write that down. Maybe it's, I want to be vice president. I want a faculty position, whatever it is. And then on the bottom, what are the plan? What do you need to do to make that happen? Let's give more talks, have publications, whatever it is. Now we're going to make your bullseye. You are at the center of the bullseye. It's all about you. The most inner circle are people who know you at your worst. They know you before you've had that first morning coffee. They know you when you're hungry. They know you when you're exhausted. Who is in that circle? Maybe it's a parent. Maybe it's a partner. Maybe it's children. Who is in that innermost circle? Just write their names down. Not their title. Don't write partner, write their names. The next circle will be colleagues, people you work with, people you could talk next to at the water cooler or the coffee maker or the Xerox machine. People you're comfortable to ask how their day was and how their weekend was. Who are those people? Write their names down. And maybe they were in a previous department or institution or company. You may or may not see them outside of work. Write their name down. The final outer circle will be people you know of, but you've never met them directly. So maybe you need to publish and you know somebody is an editor of a journal. Write their name. Or you know somebody who is in charge of leadership development at the institution. You know their name, you've never actually met them. Or maybe you want to be a faculty member and there's someone you know that has an incredible reputation for teaching. Write their name. So write the names of those people. You may not know them, but you know of them. Now what you're going to do, you're going to walk around with this paper. These are the people who are going to make up your mentoring team, or at least start to develop your mentoring team. There are no limits to how many people can be on your mentoring team. And once they're on your mentoring team, it is not a life sentence. They don't have to be on the team forever. They can come and go. And you don't need to get everyone in the same room or on the same conference call. So you really start developing the relationships with these people. And I've given you tips on how to do that. And the reason I tell the people, the core people on the inner circle, because they know you at your worst, they also know what stresses you and what you're like under stress and how much you can handle, probably better than you do. So walk around, you can add names or cross names off your bullseye and start working on those relationships, something I showed you on that very, very first slide. So something we learn about quite a bit, TC alumni know this, is the work of Dr. Carol Dweck and the fixed and growth mindset. So know that we can really develop our mentoring skills. It is not fixed. It's something that we can work with. We can always improve. And also as a mentee, we can always improve the way we work as a mentee. So I'm an avid reader. I always like to give book recommendations in my talk. So if you haven't read Mindset yet by Carol Dweck, I highly recommend it. And finally, mentorship is reciprocal and collaborative. So I encourage you to pay it forward. Be both a mentor and a mentee. And finally, I am happy to take any of your questions and comments. And I talked to you earlier about starter sentences, and I actually threw a few up there just in case any of you are stuck with questions to ask. So thank you very much. I really enjoyed this, and I'd be happy to take your questions.
Hi, everyone. If you have questions for Ruth, please feel free to go ahead and type them in the questions pane. While we wait for questions, like Ruth mentioned earlier in her presentation, she did do a webinar last year for us on networking for introverts. We'll make sure a link to that webinar as well as the link to this webinar is included in the post-webinar email that should go out tomorrow. So we have the first question, Ruth. Could you pull up the citation you had listed on the slide for what makes a good mentor?
That one?
Yes, I think, yes. So the next question I have is, I wonder what to do when a mentor-mentee relationship goes stale, as in the mentor and or the mentee are often too tired to help each other.
So that's why you have a team of mentors and not just one. And it's stale because maybe it's not appropriate anymore for this stage in your life and your career. So that's why a team of mentors is so helpful. I've never heard it referred to as stale. I love that, and I may borrow that. Thank you. Yeah, so I definitely recommend having other people and getting other perspectives. And you know what? It's okay to sometimes take a little break. I don't check in with my mentors every week. It's just not doable. Sometimes you just need to do the work. And remember, it's to help you get through can help you through a challenge or a question that you're having, but sometimes you may not have questions, and that's okay. So do it when you have a lull, and that can pick up again.
Okay, so the next question is, can you have too many mentors in the same field?
Nope. Absolutely not, because it's just additional perspective. However, you have to be careful that you're not the person who walks around asking people for their advice, waiting until you get the advice you want to hear. So that's very important. So you have to think about that about yourself and do a little reflection on that. I just want to make sure that your mentoring team is diverse. So if you're a teacher, a fifth grade teacher, not all of your mentors should be fifth grade teachers or within education.
Perfect. The next question is, do you have a specific tip for selecting a PhD advisor?
So I think that the first thing you need to figure out is, how do you learn best? And it became obvious to me that I clearly am a talker and I need to talk through challenges. So having someone who's just going to give me articles to read all day long, while I am an avid reader, I read 70 to 100 books a year, was not going to work for me for my dissertation. So I actually met with a lot of people within my department until I figured out who I click with and our working styles clicked well. And I also asked a lot of people. And the person who recommended the person who became my dissertation advisor is actually the security guard at TC, Dr. Chambers. He once saw me one day and we were just chatting, and I was telling him how I was looking for a dissertation advisor, and here's the type of person I think I'm looking for. And he actually recommended the person who ultimately wound up being my dissertation advisor. So I would talk to everybody, but first figure out how you learn best. Do you want someone who's going to drive you and really push you, or do you need your independence to do things and you'll turn it in when you turn it in? You have to figure that out about yourself first. Some people crumble under pressure, some thrive under it. Figure out who you are.
Fantastic. The next question is, what do you recommend to those who are on the Twitterverse? How can we dip our toes into the Twitterverse and eventually become more comfortable?
So first you can lurk and really read what other people are doing. Now, I really try to keep it professional because I think all of this is part of your brand, but you also want to show that you're human as well. So I don't think there needs to be pictures of the dinner or pictures of your feet on vacation. But I do try to keep it professional, right? So I was going to be doing this webinar, so I actually put it out there. When I have a paper, I actually post it on Twitter, because when you post your paper on Twitter, it's 3 times more likely to get read. And I just had a conversation today with a co-author, and I said, you do the work and you write the paper, but the reason we write the paper is not just for our own promotion, it's so other people can have additional perspectives and possibly change their course of action. But if nobody knows about your paper, did the tree really fall in the forest if nobody has heard it, right? So people need to know about it. So you can start by doing things like that, maybe responding to people as well with your own experiences. But again, I try to keep it professional. You can start by following people whose work you respect. And if you do that, you'll see how they start posting, and then you can emulate what you are comfortable with. I don't put personal things on there. It's just not something I am comfortable doing. But I like to surround myself with people who are smarter than me and better than me. And when I get to hear great things that they do, I will post it. I went to hear a talk this morning on burnout. I posted some key points from that talk so other people could hear about it as well. So those are some of the things. When my friends are doing things, I will actually amplify that. So my mentee is hosting a Twitter chat on diversity for physician scientists this weekend, and I shared that as well because I just think it's important.
Great. So the next question is, I had a mentor who discouraged me from applying from a promotion, and I applied anyway. I ended up not getting it, and now I don't know how to speak to my mentor anymore.
Oh,
Any
that's
advice?
a tough one. That's a tough one. I think honesty is the best policy. I had a mentor who said to me, you don't need a doctorate for what you want to do. Well, I'm glad I didn't listen because I did. And I think getting the doctorate at TC just opened up a whole world for me. It was also a 20-year dream of mine to get it, and to get it at TC. So I think that worked out. But you know what? You have to do what's right for you. And maybe you didn't get it, the promotion. It would be great to know, if you could, why you didn't get it. It would be great to know why your boss thought it was not the right time for you. But I think a conversation of, I really am looking for a promotion. I felt I had to try. I'd love to know what would have made me a better candidate. Can you help me become one? And I think that might try. And just say, I needed to try, and I needed to learn from the experience. Those are my tips.
Perfect. So the next question is, would you recommend setting an agenda for every meeting, i.e. only meeting when there's a question, or just meeting regularly and chatting with your mentors?
So it really depends who your mentor is. So I have someone who's extremely high ranked, and I get 18 minutes every 2 months. That's what the meeting is. So I always say I give an agenda. Here are the 4 things we need to cover in these 18 minutes. But sometimes I have just one question, and I don't like to have regularly scheduled meetings just to have regularly scheduled meetings, because then our calendars fill up with clutter. But I do like saying, I do have a question about whatever the question is. Could we find 20 minutes to talk? Coffee's on me. And I think that'll help. I really want to pick your brain about this specific question or issue or whatever it is. I think if it's very focused, you will get much better response from your mentor. Because, and if you could send that in advance, that's helpful, because you want to give them time to think about it.
Great. So we have time for one more question, and I'm so sorry in advance that we can't get to everyone's. Ruth's information is on the screen right now, so if we didn't get to your question, please feel free to shoot her a message. So the last question for today is, my mentor became my boss, and now I feel like the relationship of mentor-mentee is broken, or is it just the end of that? Should I ask her what happened, or how should I approach the situation?
So that happens often. I do want to say, first, going back to your thing, I did put my email there. I also put my Twitter there. And if you have a question, I can guarantee you there's about 10,000 other people who have the same question. So if you're on Twitter, I encourage you to ask me on there, and then we can have other people hear the response, and we're going to transfer knowledge, and I think that'll be great. When your mentor becomes your boss, maybe that mentorship relationship has run its course. Again, it's time for a team of mentors. And, it's a different relationship when that person is your boss. Now, I have bosses who have become my mentor, but I have mentors who were my bosses where it was not the best relationship because my success was not their prime objective. Because if I got promoted, that means they'd have to find someone to replace me. And remember, that's expensive and there's a steep learning curve. So it's important, your mentor should have your success at the forefront. And sometimes that's hard for a boss if your success means getting promoted and moving on. So I think it's still okay to ask your boss some questions to get their perspective, but again, go back to that team. I cannot hit that point hard and often enough because a team will give you multiple perspectives that sometimes your boss can't give you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ruth, so much for taking the time to share your expertise with us and the rest of the TC community. Just a reminder, a video of this presentation will be available on our website, and that URL again is www.tc.edu/alumni/career-webinars. Please feel free to visit our website for more information about our monthly webinars and upcoming events. We hope you can join us for our next webinar, which is called Career Transitions, Making a Change That Works for You, on February 13th with alumna Francine Fabricant. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you, everyone.